phone hooked up, so we'll have a nice view of my sewing machine. So bear with me while I work on that. If not, we'll just make do with what we have. So today's workshop is making something that I really love. It's called the untowel paper towel, or the unpaper towel. And we're using this nice soft flannel that you can find at your local Michael's. And just a straight sewing machine, just a straight stitch around. So first, let's talk about the material. This is a flannel material, and I have two different colors here that I've on my ones that I've already made, and you can see that I have them all wrapped up on a paper towel holder. And I just use these like you would use a regular paper towel, except after I've used them, I wash them. And then I just roll them back up and they're ready to go to be used a second time. And again and again and again until you have bleached them out to where they have holes in them or something like that. Do you wash your material before making them? That is really up to you. I tend to, when I'm doing something like this, I do like to pre-wash my material, especially since I'm enclosing it in. If it's going to shrink at all, this material is 100% cotton, so that type of material might shrink on you. So you want to go ahead and give that a nice wash beforehand. I don't use any sizer or anything like that to get that wash out of there. By sizer, I mean I don't use a fabric softener. I just use, your regular, however you wash your clothes, you just wash it with your regular detergent. So that's the fabric we're going to be using today. I don't really recommend using a cotton weave, like just your regular quilting type of cotton, because it won't be as absorbent. But you can certainly use the flannel on one side and like a terry cloth on the other if you wanted to, or even if you wanted to crochet a side with that, like there's a material that you can use it's like a scrubby material, yarn that you can make a scrubby with and do that on one side and stitch it onto your flannel. Is the sound okay with you? All right. Okay. So that's how we're going to start with there. Now, what I did to get my pattern was I had those half size paper towels. And I took two of those and just taped them together to make my pattern. Now, one thing, sometimes I'll add about an inch on my height and width. So I have a ½ inch to work with on my seam allowance. So that's up to you if you want to add a little bit onto your seam allowance or not. And then the other part, I used just a cup to curve the edge. The curved edge on these makes it a little bit easier when you turn them inside out. And as you can see, there's really not much of a curve when everything is all said and done. So that's kind of how we're going to get started with our curves. Let me move this out of the way here. For this one, I picked out some fun little spring kind of colors, and I can mix and match this nice plaid print with a yellow or a pink, whichever one I wanted to use. You could use turquoise or anything like that. So you can match it to your kitchen. If you are doing these for a market, you can match it just like springy colors or fall colors, whatever you want to do, or if you're gifting them. I think with a little homemade bread or something, if you're gifting a little homemade bread or homemade something, add one of these in the gift or use this to wrap up your homemade bread. Very cute. And then it's part of the gift. So let's talk about our fabric, laying it out and cutting your pattern. Now, you don't have to be exact on this. So don't get too caught up on making it perfect. Can we go to the overhead and I'll start cutting some of these. All right, great. So I have my fabric. And as I said, like it's up to you if you want to wash your material ahead of time or if you want to wait until after you've sewn them together. But again, since you are enclosing these, I do recommend to go ahead and wash your material, which I've done. So I'm just going to take my different layers and layer them on top of each other. You can cut multiple layers at once. So you can stack pile a whole bunch of pieces as much as your scissors will cut, and just cut that out at the same time. If you are, so these are about 45 inches in width. My camera's not tall enough to see all the width. Let's see if I rotate my fabric, I can get the width in here. How about we do like that? Okay, so there's the width of our material, and it should be about 45 inches wide. So that means your material is going to be, when it's open, 45 inches. When it's closed, it'll be, what's that, like 22.5 inches across. Now here's my paper towel, and as you can see, I kind of, I just taped it together to get this width and the height that I wanted. And I'm thinking if I put 2 of these, yep, okay, so we're gonna just be able to cut this right in half to make our design. So let's get a nice big ruler. This one's too big, let me find a smaller ruler. And I like to use, you can use a marking pen, one that is water soluble, so the color will go away when you wash it, or you can use chalk to mark it, or you can use a friction pen, friction, I think is how they're said, and that type of pen will dissolve when you wash it, or you can just use a pencil. Let me see my stash of goodies here. There's my pen. And I have my good cutting scissors. You can also use a pair of pinking shears if you wanted to cut this out. And you can also use your rotary cutter on your self-healing mat if you wanted to do that as well. Lots of options to cut. So whatever works for you. So what I'm going to do is I'll give myself a nice clean edge here to start with, and then I'll use the height of my material, but then I'm just going to cut this right in half. So my measurements would be, this is 11 inches by 13 inches. So first I'll give myself a nice clean edge here, and I'll line my ruler up with the folded edge and just give myself a line with my water soluble ink. So again, this will just disappear when you wash it. And if that's not gonna, there we go. And a lot of times I'll cut on the inside of that line, so I don't really worry too much about having that line show. Sometimes I've used, you know, a permanent pen, like a Sharpie or something. Okay, so we're just going to slice down here and give ourselves a nice clean edge to work with. And then we'll measure up 13 inches and then cut it in half. Now you can, again, stack your fabric up and cut multiple layers at once. I've only got 4 layers here, so I'll have my 2 lining pieces and my 2 outer pieces that I'm cutting at one time. So let's just grab this guy, and we'll put that right here. And if you have questions as we go along, please don't hesitate to drop them in the Q&A, and I'll be able to see those and answer those questions as we go along. So you can do a little bit more. It doesn't, with this type of design, it doesn't have to be exact. It fits a little bit thicker, a little bit wider, taller, I mean, then that's fine. You don't have to worry about having it an exact perfect height. Okay, so let's just take this one like this, and we'll just go right down the middle. And I'm sure everybody who sews or is thinking about sewing, you know that you have fabric scissors and you have craft scissors, and you never the two shall mix. So you don't want to cut paper with your fabric scissors. You only want to cut fabric. So I like to have a pair of fabric scissors on hand and a pair of craft scissors on hand. My craft scissors are just to cut out like patterns or, when I'm crafting paper or something like that. But your fabric scissors are your fabric scissors. And again, the two shall not mix. So we'll just give this a nice open that, and we'll open this up to get our. Now you can see here, this edge here that has this white piece on it, this is called the selvage edge. And when your fabric is made, this is what holds on to one side. And as your the shuttle of fabric goes across, it goes across, and that holds it in place. So we'll cut that bit off and not include that in our pattern. In fact, let me just go like this so you can see what I'm talking about. Also, when you make your fabric, and if you have a pattern that you're using, like the plaid that you'll see on the selvage edge, it will have little color dots. A lot of times, like those little dots there. And that's how the print master can confirm the colors of the pattern. And so it's consistent. You get consistent colors throughout. Okay, so we've got our bit there, and then we're just going to go ahead and cut out our design here. So I'll just cut off that selvage edge. This is going to be 13 inches tall by 11 inches wide. And again, if you want to overlap that and make it so you can cut 2 at a time, you certainly can do that. And then we'll just go right up this line here. And then I will curve my edges to give a nice curve on each of my corners. Now on this, just to make those corners a little bit easier, you can overlap your fabric like this. Check your, this is a good way to check your cutting and make sure you're nice and smooth there. And then just take your corners, and we'll mark the corners so that we have some nice rounded corners here. So I put down my pattern again, and then I'll just round my corners. And again, remember, it doesn't have to be with the pattern like this, it doesn't have to be perfect. So if you're just getting started with sewing and you're looking for a good beginner project, this is a great project to start with, because you can just kind of wing it a little bit. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Now, what I do like to do is I like to do sort of an assembly line when I'm sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll cut the rest of these out before we go over to the machine. Now, another good question is, do you need to iron your material before you cut with it? And my answer to that is, if you want to. That's a personal preference. Some people like to have it be very particular and make sure everything is smooth before they stitch with it. And other people are not that particular. So it's up to you. What is your comfort level? What would you be most comfortable doing? Do you want to have it cut ahead of time and nice and ironed out, or are you going to iron it as you go along? That's what I love. I really love about sewing is how imperfect a process it can be. Now, if you're making, a garment out of wool, or you're making a shirt that you're going to cut out or something like that, like a nice shirt with a lining, then I would say you definitely want to be immaculate and have everything pressed out before you start ironing it. But with what we're doing, we can just do it, not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. You save your extras. You can make little face cloths with these, little face cloth rounds. So if you use a toner at night, you can use little face cloth rounds to clean off your face, instead of using those little round cotton ball. I guess they're not cotton balls, but they're cotton pads. So you can make your own cotton pads if you wanted to. Okay, so again, we're just gonna get that lined up. I'll bring over the second pair. So I will have, out of about, what, like a quarter of a yard, I will have three, um, 3 towels ready, prepped and ready to go. So we're just gonna line this up and mark it. And I'll get a nice circle there. I get some of these, sometimes it's like, well, that's just a suggestion. That's a suggestion of a curve. But you can make it very precise and make your curve exactly on the line. See, I'm kind of not quite lined up here. Get myself lined up there. There we go. Okay. Then we'll line this up back down here. There we are. Okay, now just grab your sewing scissors again and curve yourself here. Now, if you didn't want to do the curve, if you wanted to keep it as a straight corner, you could certainly do that. You don't have to do the curve. I like the curve when I turn it inside out. It makes it a little bit easier. Okay. And then you also will be using a top stitch. So if you wanted to use a coordinating color or contrasting color with your top stitch, you want to have that handy. I'm just going to use white throughout mine, but I am going to go ahead and press out some of these heavier wrinkles now while we're here. So if you're in the comments section, we do have the Q&A. I would love to know if you are working with me, like if you're going to be sewing with me or if you're watching. And also, I'd love to know where you are in your sewing journey. Are you just getting started? Have you been sewing for a while? What is it that what are your goals? What are your sewing goals, your hopes and dreams for your sewing? Okay, so we're just going to give this a nice little press here. Get these wrinkles out. Should have gotten a little extra water in my iron. Okay.
Kathy says that she's an experienced seamstress and she's watching along with us today.
Nice. She's watching along and participating? Or did
I
she say
believe
just
just
watching?
watching today.
Just watching. Okay, perfect. Well, that's awesome. So I'm just going to line up. Now, this is my wrong side. Your fabric will have a right side and a wrong side. The right side of your fabric, you can really usually see your pattern. So this is the right side. And then the wrong side is the dull side of it. So you don't see the pattern. You won't see your pattern as well. With my little yellow here, I don't have a pattern to worry about. Okay. And then you'll just grab you can use pins or you can use clips, whichever works easiest for you. And you'll want to go ahead and clip or pin this together. Now, to be honest with you, I've been sewing for a long time and I don't always pin everything together. So if you're just getting started with sewing, you want to make sure that you pin and line up all of your different sides and your corners. And the pinning will hold everything in place until you get to it, until you're ready to remove that pin. And you might just do a double check and make sure you're lined up as best you can be. If you find you're a little crooked here, we can just line that back up.
So we have Eliana and Ariel that are working along with us today. And we have someone else that is just watching but learning at the confident beginner level, almost intermediate.
Ooh, I love that. The confident beginner level is always such a good spot to be at because you like know enough to be dangerous, but you get yourself in a pickle sometimes. Okay, so you've noticed on my pinning, I do have 2 pins on one side and 1 pin on each of the other sides. These 2 pins I'm going to leave as my opening because we're going to turn this inside out so that we have a nice clean edge to work with. So when it's done, we're going to turn ours inside out. That's why we have our right sides together. So we'll start here and stitch all the way around and end here. So if you're working with me, I'm going to go ahead and get my other two pieces ready to go. If you'd like to, work ahead and you're ready to go take it to your machine, please do so. Or if you're still working on just cutting out, this will give you an opportunity to catch up. And as you can see, I have some of my marking down here. I'm not worried about that because that is going to disappear. First of all, it'll disappear when I sew it, but then when it gets washed, it will also disappear. It will dissolve away. So I learned how to sew. I'll tell you a little bit of my story while we're working on this. My sister actually is the one who first learned to sew. A neighbor was teaching her daughter how to sew, and my sister was her friend and said, "I want to learn how to sew." So they used to have all these sewing together times. And being the younger sister, I wanted to do everything my big sister did. So she and I used to spend our weekends, our rainy, cold weekends together and sew in the basement. And she taught me how to sew like mini skirts and dresses and prom dresses and everything like that. And then I got to go to college and study fashion design. So I took my sewing to another level and got to go to college and continue pursuing sewing um, at a higher level. um, but we didn't even have I was freshman year of college, we started to learn CAD, computer aided design. And I had to learn how to make patterns and grade patterns by hand, which that was a fun class. So if you ever, that doesn't have a tip. If you ever want to learn how to adjust a pattern, you can just look up some grading designs on YouTube on how to do that. And that helps you learn how to modify and adjust a pattern for yourself. Okay, so I have 3 here ready to go. We're going to leave our little opening here for your hand. So your opening, you just need your opening big enough for your hand to fit through there. So just give that a double check and make sure your hand can fit through and grab and cut it out. Not cut it out, pull it out. Okay, so I'm going to check my sewing machine camera and see if I got that set up. I think it's on. And we'll start sewing over there. Okay, let's see, it looks crooked. Let me just get that adjusted. There we go. And get that turned on. Sorry, there we go. All right. So you guys get to see my messy space here. Okay, let's get that turned around. Oops. All right. So I'm just using a Singer. This is just a basic Singer machine here. It has all of the good fancy kind of cut. What are these stitches on here? You have your buttonholes down here and everything like that. So this is just like a really good basic Singer machine. One thing I like about this, and if you don't have a machine, what I would definitely look for is one that allows you to drop your needle, because you want to be able to sink your needle into what you're making. Okay, so we're gonna try. I'm kind of at the side of this. We'll do the best we can. All right, so we're gonna put your material in and start at the starting point. So you've got these 2 pins. Go to the bottom pin, and if you want to do like a 5/8 inch seam allowance, you can look all the way here at the 5/8 inch seam. The edge of your presser foot is usually about 1/4 of an inch, which is about what I'm going to work with. So I'll drop my foot down, remove my pin, and I'm going to stitch forward and then reverse it. Now I'm going to go ahead and sink my needle just to make it easy. So we're just going to go forward a few stitches and then backwards a few stitches. One thing about these Singer machines that my other sewing machines don't do is usually when I do the back stitch, I have to put my pressure foot, but with these machines, you don't. You just push the button and it does the work for you. So we're just going to come down and work our way around our curve. And since it's a curve, I don't have to move my foot or anything like that. I'm just going to work it right around that. Now, if you didn't do the curve and you have a corner, what you want to do is sink your needle, press up your presser foot, and rotate your material. And then you would keep coming and stitch down at the corner. But since again, I have mine curved, I'm just going to walk the fabric along the edge of the presser foot. And again, I apologize, I'm at like a weird angle here. So you want to try and keep it as smooth as possible so it doesn't wrinkle up on you. And then you'll just be able to stitch right down that seam. And keep going as to each corner and all the way around. And if your fabric is off, like you can see how mine is off a little bit, you can pick that top piece up and move it over, or just let it be off a little bit and go with the yellow as your seam allowance. So we're just going to walk that right around. If you need to, you can always kind of pull up your presser foot and rotate your fabric as you go around that curve. So as you're starting to learn to sew, that's an easy way to get around your curves. Just pick up that presser foot as you go. And then just let her rip. And I do think like learning how to sew and get your comfort level with your needle and the speed that you're sewing, it's like learning how to drive. If you ever drove a standard car, you have to have that right pressure on the gas pedal as you're releasing your clutch. So I always say as you're learning to sew, just kind of learn how to get consistent with your foot on your presser foot, so that on your sewing machine gas pedal, so that you can just stitch smoothly. If you do a lot of stop and start, I think that can gunk up your bobbin a little bit. So I prefer to keep it as smooth running as possible. Okay, and now as we're coming up to the front, we're just going to smooth it out, remove that last pin, take an eye of where you need to stop and back stitch. So I need to stop and back stitch right about there. And if you forget to back stitch, don't worry. It's okay. We'll be able to come right back and stitch over that. So we're going to go ahead and do a little back stitch right there. All right. And then there we go. So you go ahead and pull that out. You can clip it off on the edge of your machine there, or use your scissors and trim it that way. But you'll see here now I have a nice smooth seam all the way around, about 1/4 of an inch seam with my opening here. Why not go ahead and stitch up one more? Maybe I'll get 2 more done. And just so you can, if you're still stitching, then that gives you a chance to finish up your stitching. And if you're watching this on a recording, you can always pause and kind of come back and finish up a step as you need to. So you could pause here and finish stitching around. So you see how I could just pull around that corner as we go. Sometimes I feel like Mario Andretti working the corners on these. Here we go. We're going to go curve, run that curve, and we're just going to pull as we go. So the fewer pins you use, the easier it is sometimes. But also gives you a little room for error. And by easier, I mean easier because you don't have so many pins to remove as you're going. Okay, so we're coming back to our stopping part here. Do our forwards and backwards stitch, and there we go. And now we can go back over to our overhead camera and turn these around. Oh, actually, before we do that, Rich, let me show, sorry, let me show one more little trick here. Okay, so I can get closer on my camera here. When you have your threads, you have your top thread here and your bobbin thread on the back. If you take your top thread and pull it towards you, it will loosen the back loop. If you take your like pin and stick it in there and pull that back loop up, it will bring your bobbin thread to the front. And then you can tie that off. So right there, you could then tie that off and make that a nice, like it makes it sturdier. Makes your where you start and stop a little bit sturdier to do it that way. When I'm doing something like this, where I'm turning it inside out, I don't tend to do that. But I thought I'd show you that little trick when we've got the camera close. Okay, now we can go back. Now I can do the overhead. All right. So you can go ahead and do that little trick if you want to pull your strings to the same side. Just give one a little tug until you can kind of get in there and bring the bobbin thread to the front side. But you don't have to do that. We can just trim it on both sides if you want. I'll do that on when I finish my top stitch, I will do that little pull through on that thread just to make it a little bit nicer, if you will. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention is sometimes when you're sewing, your bobbin thread will cause like a nest, it's called, on the back side of your design. And you don't want that to happen. So a couple of ways to troubleshoot that is to begin stitching with a scrap. So you can take a scrap piece of material and begin to stitch that and then do your stitching once you don't take that little scrap off, you just kind of keep stitching and then you cut that off at the end. So that's one way to avoid the bird's nest. Now, where our opening is, I went ahead and pressed that seam open, and that will make it easier for me when we flip it inside out. You can go ahead and, if you want to, trim your corners and give this a little press open. So to trim my corners, if you had done a square corner, you would just lop off this bit here like this. You would just trim that off like that. Since we did the rounded corners, you can either do like some cut-ins like this, little triangles. You can just lop it off. But basically what you want to do is reduce the amount of fabric that's going to be in that turn because it will get a little bulky. This is kind of how I prefer to do it with the cut-ins like that. I think just lopping off the corner can cause some problems down the line in terms of your seam staying if you go too close and cut it off. So just giving yourself a little cut in like that will work really nicely for you. I get a little aggressive with my scissors sometimes, so I have cut into my seams just doing the lopping it off like that across the corner. So I like to do a little bit like that. Now, I am particular about my seams. I do like my seams to be nice and crisp, or as crisp as possible I can get them. So I will press my sides open a little bit, and then we'll go press them again once we have turned it inside out. So we'll just kind of give those a nice little press. Definitely you want to do that press here on the spot where we're turning it inside out. Now, I have found two things that are super helpful in turning your corners. One is a this is like a bone folder. It's a corner turner in fabric world, but it is also a bone folder. Used to be made out of whalebone. Now it's made out of wood or plastic. Something that is like a round ball point like this, or even an Apple pencil, is good at getting in your corners. So you just stick your hand in, go to one corner, and put one finger right to the corner. And with your other finger, like your thumb, go ahead and open up that seam and push it through. And if you can get in there and do that to another corner, that's great. If not, just keep pushing it all through. We'll just kind of push that open and push that through like this. All right, now it looks like a hot mess, doesn't it? But we just keep opening it up, pushing out your corners, and this is where your those little notches you cut in there make that corner nice and smooth. And you can use your corner rounder or your Apple pencil to push that out a little bit more if you need to. You don't want to push too much because you don't want to poke through it, but you want to just push enough so that it opens up. And if you want to, and you're comfortable enough with your iron and your hands, you can just kind of hold your two fingers on here and take the tip of your iron and just give that a little press. Not anything aggressive, you're not going to hold it on for too long. If you have the Cricut little mini press, that's good for this task, to just kind of open up that seam with the tip right there. All right, then you're just going to work your way around, finger pressing your seams. If you want to, you could quilt this. So, run some diagonal stitches on it if you wanted to. I don't, I leave it like this. Okay, so then when you get your corner, your seam is nice and pressed open, you've got a nice round corner there, just grab your iron and give that a press. And then we'll work that on all the different sides. Got two more here. I use a lot of different irons, to be honest with you. I use, this is a great steam iron. It has a really high steam rate. So I really love it when I'm working with cottons or wools. It's great. It's actually good for everything. I use my easy presses. I have the Cricut Easy Press. The mini is fantastic to use when you're sewing, believe it or not, because you can really use it close to your fingers. And I've never burned myself with that. I burn myself with my regular iron. And then I'll use my clamshell press, my big heat press sometimes if I'm getting fabric pieces, like getting a wrinkle out of it or something like that. So you can use whatever iron works for you, whatever heat source works for you. But you do want to make sure that you have a nice shape at this point that you're happy with and that you feel comfortable with. If it's a little crooked somewhere, you can kind of press it with your finger and fix that. But again, if you're just making these for yourself and this is a beginner project for you, it's okay if it's a little crooked. Now, the last step, we have our opening. So we have to close up our opening here. You can use hem tape and just it's a double-sided heat tape, and just use hem tape and hem that up and close it, or an Aleene's Fabric Fusion, which is fabric glue, and you could just put that right on there and have it close your seam right there if you wanted to. If you wanted to, this is a good spot or a good time. I should have suggested it sooner, but you can put like a little loop onto your design, so you can hang it if you just want to have one. And by a little loop, I mean like you could take a little loop of your fabric and put that in there so that you can just hang this or in a corner. You could also do a little buttonhole stitch on here so it can just go onto a little hook. There's a keyhole stitch too. A lot of machines will have that you could do on the corner and stitch it with a little keyhole. But now what we're ready to do is go ahead and we're going to do a top stitch around the edge of our piece here. So we're going to go back over to our machine. This is where you may want to switch to if you wanted to do like a pink color, you could switch to a pink color, or you could do, some other color for your top stitch. So this is where my opening is. I'm going to start above my opening and I'm going to try and stitch. I can get myself positioned here so that my needle will go right down about it's like a 16th of an inch to the edge there. So I keep it very close to the edge when I do that top stitch. I'm also going to switch my stitch length to 3. So it's normally it's 2.5, but for a top stitch, I like to go a little bit thick, a little bit wider. You can even go to a 3.5 if you wanted to. That's because this is a decorative stitch, so this is a good time just to do that a little bit thicker. And by
So,
thicker, I mean longer.
so Kesley, we have a question from one of our crafters, asking, well, love the quilting idea. Is there a basic general technique 2 inches apart, 4 inches apart?
Yeah, so it's, you can do on something this small, probably 1 to 2 inches. I have done it where before I've stitched, well, no, not before I've stitched it. After I've stitched it, I've done, before I do the top stitching, just across. So I've taken a straight stitch and gone from corner to corner and done just a diagonal like that. But I would think like 1 inch to 2 inches would be perfect. And this is also, if you're a beginner, just learning how to use your machine, this is a time where you can try some of the different decorative stitches if you wanted to. Like my machine has a cute little kite tail kind of stitch that I could do as my top stitch. So let me just go ahead and finish this up. We'll do that top stitch. And I'm a little bit sideways to my machine just with the camera. So I'm going to do my best to keep it straight. I hope you understand if it's not. We'll sink my needle. So if I get a little off my curve here, I can adjust. There we go. Now with that stitch, I've closed up the opening where I tucked my hand in. So we've closed that up. There are also, if you're interested in quilting, something like this, there's an attachment that you can get for sewing machines that would extend from the foot and come out, and you can adjust how far out it comes. But that's a great way to get those 1 inch or 2 inch distances to follow your stitch lines. So you would just use that kind of extender to follow your stitch lines. All right, and then that's all. This is it. Once we're done this, we'll pull that bobbin thread up, tie it off, and that'll be done. Here we go. You could also, if you wanted to make this into a hot pad, there is in fleece that is specifically for heat. It's a fleece interfacing that is specifically for heat. And you could make this into a hot pad. So you might want to make it a little smaller, but you could use that as a third layer and make that into a hot pad if you wanted to. So again, I will just come back and grab my top thread here and give it a little pull. Let's see, this one might be the better one. Yeah, there we go. Give that a little pull. And then we'll tie this off and then trim it. So once you have those two there, we'll just tie it and then trim it off. And that's how I finish off my my thread there. Give it a nice little tie. If your thread has a little bit of polyester in it, you could always burn it down, and that actually melts, the polyester will melt, and that will also get it so that it won't fray off. But just doing that little knot thing will be good. Let's see, it's hard to see. There you go. Okay, and then we just tie that and same thing. I do usually, before I overlap there, I usually will do where I started and do this little technique before getting to the end, so I don't stitch over my stitches. That makes sense. Okay, so there we go. Now we're all done. Do you want to do the front camera? How am I doing on time? Got 10 minutes. All right, so there we've got it. We're all done. I can mix this in with different towels if I want to. If you're doing this for your home, you know, you can have a whole bunch of different ones. I like to have some that are dark colors in case I don't know, getting really dirty. I can just use that. The dark I also like for makeup. So if you wanted to make these for makeup removers, the black is great. And you can even use fusible iron-on vinyl and do like a little makeup on the bottom, so somebody knows, oh, I can clean off my face makeup with that dark color and not offend my house guest or my mom or whoever you need to work with. But that's all you have to do. So you can just take that yard of fabric and I made 9 of them, I think, out of a yard of fabric. So you really can get quite a few. I do 6 on a roll. So that's my 6 on a roll. And when I roll them up, I will wash them and then I lay them out on the counter so they overlap a little bit. About halfway through, you can see how they overlap. And then you just take a roll and roll that up. And if you use in heat transfer vinyl, save those heat transfer vinyl rolls because they work perfect for this project. So this is I think this is a great craft fair project. So if you're looking to a little side hustle this fall, I know it's early, like it's only April, and I'm talking about a Christmas market, but this not only is a great craft fair item, it is a great gift. So if you wanted to, you could, make these, have them as a gift. You can, have them bundled up in 3s. I've seen them done this way, like almost like napkins, but you can just fold them into 3rds, create a little belly band with them, and sell them like this. So in my kitchen, I have the roll on my counter, and then I also have them folded into a little container in a drawer. So you can't miss them around here. Now, I did offer one more treat for this workshop tonight, and I've got it cut out. Let me just kind of clean up these items here. I'm going to set these back, and we're going to grab up the next one. We only have about 10 minutes, so I'm going to, hopefully I'll get this done, but it's basically the same. So this is a burp rag. If you have a newborn, you know how important the burp rag is. When my kids were little, I had a ton of diapers that I would just throw over my shoulder and, let them burp on that, carry away. This is a little bit different burp rag because it has a cutout for your shoulder. So when you put it on there, it just sits on your shoulder like this. It's nice and soft, so the baby can kind of go to sleep on it if they need to, but it's just nice and it's just a soft and cozy little burp rag. So it's designed, it has just a round oval head and it's a narrow neck and then another round head here just to kind of give your blouse a little cover and a little cover on the back there. So if you're you're burping that way, it'll go down your back. Um, you can also make these so that this side is straight down and then it just goes on like that. So you don't have so much in the neck area. So to make these, you just have to kind of design your pattern. Let me give you the measurements of this. So it is, so you want to make it about 20 inches long. And at the widest part here, it is about 9 inches. So what I would do is just take a plate and put a round plate at the top and a round plate at the bottom, and then draw straight sides here. That's all you have to do. So if you want to make it bigger, you can make it bigger, you can make it smaller. If you want to add a little pocket for a binky or a little clip-on for a binky, you can do that too. I don't know, what do they call it? My kids called those bubbas.
We have one comment and one question.
Okay.
First, the comment from Sharon. She said, "Lovely project, useful, and your demo was so clear. Thanks, Michaels, for sponsoring." So thank you, Sharon, for
Thank you so
joining us,
much.
for the kind words. And we do have one quick question. I did mention we might not have time to get to it, but I did say that they can go back and remember, check the link there in the chat, and you can review today's class if you missed something. She's wondering, is there any way that you could do another closing really quickly?
Another what?
Closing?
Oh, yeah, I'll do that with this.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
That's
good.
awesome. There we
Yeah.
go.
Okay. So for this one, you just will need, we're adding a fusible fleece. So this is a little cushioning on the inside that we're adding. It's great if you want to quilt this. You were asking about quilting. This will add a little extra puff if you need it. So we're going to cut, you'll have your top piece, your back piece, and then your fusible interfacing. And I cut my fusible interfacing about a quarter of an inch smaller than my actual piece. So my interfacing won't create bulk in that seam. So it's a little bit smaller than the actual seam. Can you guys, hopefully you guys can see that as I held that up. Can you see that? I did it on a different color. So what we'll do is we'll create a little sandwich with the interface on the outside and your two front facing fabrics facing each other. So it's just the same way we created the sandwich with the cloth, the unpaper paper towel, and we'll close that up with some pins. Now I will have the same opening there that I had with the other piece. So we'll have like a little opening there that I can reach my hand in. So I have got that opening there. And I'm just going to give myself a little bit of pins as I go around. So we'll just put some pins on here. And, you know, the great thing too about sewing is you can go to the thrift store and pick up so many different pieces of material. So if you had some old flannel shirts, you can make, like if you had a grandfather and you wanted to make some burp rags for a grandfather, you could do that with him with those old flannel shirts. We just have a new baby coming in our family, and I think that would be such a fun gift to do. Okay, so here's my opening, and I'll go back to my machine here. And I'm going to use my interfacing as my guide for my stitching. So I'll start at my beginning here, sink my foot down, put my needle position down, do a little back stitch here. Now I did just notice, thank goodness, that my stitch length was at my top stitch, which happens all the time to me. I do that. So I'm just going to follow along as best I can my interfacing. I don't want to get that into the stitch. I know it looks like I am. If I were to add the quilting to this, I would probably quilt it before stitching it together on this one. Just work this all the way around. I usually end up with pins in my mouth. I don't know about you guys, but I can't do that with my class. So the fusible interfacing is good because it's in place and you don't have to worry about it moving on you. I've got it ironed on, so it just can go right around with it. And I know I'm doing this quickly, so if you can always go back and watch it again if you need to, but we'll just do our back stitch there. All right, same thing. We'll undo this. Now, if we can go back over to the overhead camera and I'll turn this inside out. So if you were interested, wanted to see how to do that again, we're just going to turn this inside out. So since it's all round, I don't really have to worry too much about getting in there in those corners. But we'll just work this way. I'm really loving the idea of the old flannel shirts as a gift for somebody. Now I've got to hunt some down. All right, so we're just going to go like this and get all these pushed out this way. All right, and we'll just, again, you want to get those seams nice and open. I should have pressed my seams before I turned it inside out. My apologies. But in that where you have your opening, I've got a nice big opening here. And if you didn't turn it inside out, I mean, if you didn't press it before turning it inside out, you want to press it now. So we're just going to push both sides in and give that a nice little press. So we're going to create that seam. So I'm going to push the pink side in first. That's a little bit easier. So see how my tip of my iron is just getting in there and pushing that in. I've got that interfacing to follow that little line there. And then I'll take my top fabric, line that up, and we'll create a nice finishing seam right there. So I've got that right there, nice and finished, okay? So that's what you want to do on your towel too. I should have shown you how to do that seam first. Anywhere that you have bulk, like there's bulky there, you can just, you could trim that down with your scissors before doing the top stitch. I'm not going to do that on this one because of time, but you would want to, before flipping it inside out and pressing it, you do want to reduce that bulk there as best you can. Go ahead. This is a pretty big opening. We'll go ahead and stitch that closed. I'm going to put some pins in there to make sure I get that seam stuck in there. Okay. Now, again, if you like to use clips, you can use clips or you can use pins, whichever works best for you. Okay, and then we're just going to press that. And then we'll go back over to our machine and we're going to do that top stitch all the way around this one. So again, that top stitch is what's going to give you that closure. So where I have my opening here, when I do that top stitch that's really close around, that top stitch will close that up. Okay, so let's go back on over to the machine and we'll do this last top stitch. If you have any questions, this is a good time to pop those in there so we can answer. If you had any last minute questions or anything you hoped I was going to go over and I didn't, I'm happy to answer any of those questions. I'm going to pump up to a 3 length stitch and just go ahead and get started. Also, if you have that nesting problem with your bobbin, let me show you that like before because I know that as a beginner sewist, that is so frustrating. So what you can do is just take a piece of scrap paper, not paper, fabric, sink your needle in, and then stitch. So if you do have, I'm a little thick there. Oops. Sorry, I didn't have my stitch down. But if your bobbin's going to misbehave, it'll misbehave on this material and not on your finished project. The biggest cause of that bobbin nesting is not having your bobbin in your machine properly. So if you find that you get the bobbin nesting, reload your bobbin. It may be how you wound your bobbin. Maybe it got too tight or not tight enough, and it may not be in your machine properly. So we'll do that top stitch all the way around. I'll take my needles out, making sure that I get that closure I want. And we'll just work this all the way around. I do have some more sewing classes coming up. So if you enjoyed this class, we have more sewing classes on the Michaels website. I know I have one coming up in June, and I think I have one more this month. I just can't think of what the project is. Oh, I know, I'm doing a pencil roll. So if you want to learn how to something to roll, it's like a roll up for colored pencils or crayons or cosmetic brushes. Again, that's a great gift idea. It's a stash buster. So if you're looking for good gift ideas, that class and this class is a great one. I know I have a fun one coming up in June that I have not put up yet, but it's going to be a good one to keep your eye out for. And I really love that Michaels now has fabric, so I want to keep supporting that so they keep growing that department. And we get to see more and more fabric coming in. There we go. So I'm going to come back to this start here. And like I mentioned, to pull that up and tie that off. Ah, here we go. Double stitch, and then we'll just take that right to the end. So I hope that answered the question about doing the closure again. Right on up. And again, if you are doing a craft fair, if you need a little side hustle, I've never seen these little burp rags at a craft fair, so you might be a unique position. You could have a whole booth with all types of upcycled items. So just keep that in mind, some fun ideas. I love the idea of the custom burp rag using dad, granddad, or somebody else's great grandfather's old flannel shirt. All right, so there we go. We have done the burp rag. So if you have, oops, I should put that on the other shoulder. So if you have gifts you need to give this season, this is a very fun item you can make. If you do hand embroidery, you could do some hand embroidery on this. You have all of our unpaper paper towels and all the different ways that you can use these for face cloths in the kitchen. Just make little circles and do the same technique for using toner or anything like that. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I truly love sewing, and these are all projects that are great for beginners. So if you have people in your family that want to learn how to sew, these are really simple projects that they can get started with. I hope you inspire another sewist, and I hope I inspired you. Have a great weekend, everybody.